And now I suppose you want to know all the juicy details, right? What was going on there? How are you? It's good to be with you. I love camp. And probably more than what I love about camp is to talk about love and marriage. And getting used to the setup here. There we go. So people will ask me, where's your wife? You know, some people will start rumors like, I don't know if you really have a wife. That's my wife, Betsy. And we've been married 40 years this year. And we do tons of stuff together. We walk every morning. We have taken up birding. Do we have any birders here? Chasing birds? Yeah, we've taken up birding. But our favorite thing to chase is grandkids, which is where she is this weekend. She is down in St. Louis, and I think I turned this on. There we go. And here we are in Monterey. But she is down in St. Louis, and she's chasing one of the newest additions of our grandchildren. This is Lily, and she discovered where the Halloween candy was stashed. Can you tell? Yes, it's true, ladies and gentlemen, that you can get too much of a good thing. There's the proof with Lily, but she is a sweetheart. And so that's where Betsy is. We've got 5 children, 5 adult children, ranging from the ages of 39 down to 26. It's why I'm bald. I have a little bit of hair left, but really grateful for them. So I know that you've traveled from various distances, and I want to do something because we're going to learn together in a community. So we're all here, and most of what you're going to be interacting with is going to be, of course, with your spouse. But I want to ask you to step out a little bit with me today, and I want you to stand up. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to find one other person that you don't know. It's a mixer. I promise introverts, I'm an introvert as well. This will be the last extroverted thing. So go ahead, move around. Find a person you don't know. Introduce yourself to the neighbor. Don't worry, it's not going to be dangerous. I like the sound of that. Now, while you're doing that, make sure that you have a sheet of paper. Okay, you guys, I love how you're jumping in. Now, do you all have a pen? Does everybody have a pen? Does anybody need a pen? If you need a pen, raise your hand real high, and Larry's going to help you out. Does everybody have a sheet of paper? Do you need a sheet of paper? Okay. Would you guys help me out? Would you walk around and give a sheet of paper to whoever needs one? Yep. Here, I'll give you a little bit too. If you need a sheet of paper, raise your hand real high. Real high. Good work. Good work, people. And then what you're going to want to do is you and your new friend, you're going to want to spread out a little bit. You're going to want some room. So spread out a little bit. And as you're walking someplace, decide who is going to be the interviewer. So who's going to ask the questions and who's going to answer the questions. So one of you will ask, one of you will answer, and then you're going to switch. Okay? All right. Okay. Do you know who's going to ask the questions? You're all set? Okay, here's the deal. I'm going to give you 1 minute to find out as much information as you can about your new friend, starting now. $30 more seconds. 5 more seconds. And stop. Now, as you can probably guess, you're just going to reverse roles. The person that was answering questions is going to ask them, and you've got 1 minute. Ready, set, go.
It was until I joined Trump here.
30 more seconds. Ten more seconds. And stop. Now what I'd like you to do is stand back to back with your friend. Back to back with your friend. And on your sheet of paper, what I would like you to do is on your sheet of paper, get the clean side, and you're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 down the left-hand column of the paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to ask you some questions. Are you ready? Question number 1. What color is their hair? What color is their hair? Yeah. Question number 2. What color are their eyes? Question 3 is very tempting, but remember, God is always watching. It's tempting just to kind of lean back. But about how tall are they? About how tall? Question number 4. Did they have any rings on? Now remember, this is a marriage retreat, so that's kind of a... But you'll get extra credit if you saw more rings and you know how many there. Number 5. Again, another tempting one just to kind of peek, but remember, the Lord's watching. What color is their shirt or their blouse? Question number 6. What color is their pants? And last but not least, what color is their shoes? Turn around and see how you did. Okay. All right. Well, bid your friend an adieu. Head back. Find your spouse in your chair. Now, back in the early 60s, when all the James Bond things were coming out, there was a surge in people that were interested in being a part of the FBI. So the FBI had come up with a screening process where all these new candidates would be ushered into a big auditorium and they would do what you just did. If you did not score 7 out of 7, you were asked to leave. Did anyone get 7 out of 7? It'd be hard to see the eyes in this room. Yeah? How about 6 out of 7? That's pretty good. Your FBI material. 5 out of 7? And the rest of you see me after class, would you please? So, we're not here to be trained for the FBI, but here's my point in doing that. First of all, I wanted to get you moving around and meeting somebody, which is always fun. But we think sometimes we're paying attention to what matters, but are we? And learning love is one of the most complex things that we do as human beings. It requires us to really figure out what we need to pay attention to, but then give time to it. And so this weekend, we're really trying to hone in on what is it? What is it that helps us to learn love? And in particular, my burden as both a pastor and a marriage counselor has been, how does my faith fuel my practice of love? That's what my first book is about. I'll have some copies tomorrow out there, but it's when you think about it, you go, okay, God's always saying to us that we need to practice love. Love, love, love. Love your neighbor. Love your spouse. Love your enemy. And you get all this love stuff, and he keeps talking to us about it from the beginning of the book to the end. And we hear so much about how does our faith help us to practice. We think when we get started and we meet this person that it's going to be happily ever after. Oh, you got newlyweds? He just reached over and kind of said, yeah. Look at this couple. They're absolutely smashed on hormones. I mean, the pheromones, the dopamine, it is rushing their brains. They're just like loopy. They're what the owl told Bambi and company, they're Twitter-pated. They're just absolutely wiped out. But one day what's going to happen is they're going to discover a difference. It's going to be shocking. It's going to be frightening. It's going to be catching them completely unawares. Like, I didn't know that look meant that. Has that happened to you? Like, that look, and you go, I haven't seen that look before. And you know something's changing. I didn't know you squeezed the toothpaste that way. I didn't know you put on the toilet paper that way. I did a marriage seminar about, 4 years ago, and there were so many engineers in that group. After I mentioned putting the toilet paper on, I had several engineers come up and draw a diagram illustrating the proper way to insert toilet paper, and they wanted me to tell couples. So if you want to know, see me afterwards, and I'll give you what these engineers thought. But when you hit this point and you notice there's a difference in what's happening, the average couple waits 6 years before they see someone like me. Now, this is not a push to come see me or actually to go see anybody, but after 6 years of struggling, it's where a lot of couples just start to feel a distance that grows and they start turning away from one another. Dr. John Gottman found out a critical difference. He is a professor of marriage and family at the University of Washington. They have one of the most notable marriage and family programs in the country, actually globally. And they have this section of the campus that's called the Love Labs. And if you guys wanted to go and be a part of John Gottman's research, what you'd do is you would go and you'd interview with 3 different graduate interns who would interview you, and they would need to score you 5 out of 5 for marital satisfaction. After that, either John or Julie Gottman would just meet with you briefly and you'd be in the program, but they only work with highly satisfied couples so that they can learn from the people who are doing marriage the best. And one of the things that Gottman learned, and actually it was one of these times where you would sign on and there'd be certain places like in the kitchen or in the living room where you would allow the cameras to record you so that John and Julie and the graduate interns could study how it is that you do marriage. And John's all-time favorite couple were sitting at this little dinette set in the kitchen in the Love Shack. And John was waiting. He kept waiting, like, when is this couple going to talk about something significant? Because they seem to chit-chat a lot, and they laugh, and they're good comrades, but he loved this couple. They felt so connected to him, and he kept waiting for them to talk about, like, the meaning of life or something deep. And so one day he was watching them as they were sitting in the kitchen, and he got frustrated, and he put down the camera thing, and his wife, Julie, said, "You're not seeing it, are you?" And he said, I don't like seeing what? What am I supposed to see? And so she rewound the tape, and she said, "Watch this." And so the wife was over at the counter, and she was making a sandwich. And then her husband was sitting there, and he was reading the paper and drinking a cup of coffee, and she turned towards him, and she asked something. And he stopped what he was doing, and he turned towards her. And then they went back to what they were doing. And then all of a sudden, the husband, a few minutes later, said something to her, and she turned around. Julie turned it off. She goes, "Do you see it now?" And John was like, "You got to help me." Julie said, "I've been studying this, and you know what? The highly satisfied couples turn towards one another 3 times more than the unhappy couples." Just something as simple as stopping what you're doing to turn towards your spouse brings connection. And when these people, when they hit this spot, there's a natural turning away. It's like, I don't get you, I don't understand. But what really needs to happen in the moment is turning towards. And then you start to realize, wow, this thing called love requires work. But it's not bad work. It's the work of life. It's work that works on us. It grows us. And so what I want to talk with you tonight is I want to lay a groundwork. Why is love so challenging? Why does it have moments where it seems to stretch us? Let me give you just a list, and then we're going to walk through, and we're going to do a couple exercises too. But the challenge of love is, the reality is love is good, but it's hard work. Can I get an amen from anybody? But who told you that? Who's relayed to you that, you know what, you're going to have to work at this? When Betsy and I first met, people were so excited. It was like, you guys are going to be great. You're going to have so much fun. You connect so easily. You're going to enjoy it. We had no idea after Maria came, our first child, how much work we were going to put in to stay connected. And then secondly, we all hear this, that opposites attract until they don't. And then what do? And I've seen it over and over again in 40 years of working with couples. It's really true, opposites attract. We're going to talk more about it. But the challenge of opposition is that different feels dangerous. We like the world according to us. The world according to Mark is a great place. But all of a sudden when the world of Mark gets invaded by the world of Betsy, and she's different, it feels dangerous to us. Which then it takes energy and involves risk and those wonderful things that we call emotions, which you got lots of training on how to handle emotions, right? But the reality is that love is good, hard work. So, what makes it so challenging is this sheet of paper represents you as an individual. You and I are finite. We're limited, as represented by this 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. There's only so much of you. And so when I get going and all of a sudden Betsy says, well, I need you to do, it takes something. And then one of my 5 kids calls and says, Dad, I need you to come and pick me up. It takes something. And then I get a call from someone in the congregation that said an emergency. That takes something. How am I feeling right now? If that's you, how are you feeling? And then you go to work, and your boss, and your coworker, and the neighbor that bugs you, How are you doing? How are you feeling? And at that moment, you're like, oh, what will I do? How can I do this? The reality is that love brings us to a place where we realize, you know what, every relationship that we have as Christians is not a dyad, it's not two, it's a triad. Jesus wants to be right in the middle of it with you because you know what? He never runs out. He never runs out. We do. He doesn't. And so the challenge, it seems, is that it's brought us into this place where we're going to run into places where we feel scattered and spread too thin and that we don't have enough in the tank. And it's an invitation. We'll talk more about this. But I want you to realize that love will take you to places where you feel like, I just don't have it. And that's a challenge. And then opposites attract. Until they don't. But I see it all the time. The talker marries a listener. A racer marries a pacer. A spender marries a saver. Dreamers marry planners. Night owls marry morning doves. It goes on and on and on. I remember some years ago I was doing some pre-marriage with a younger couple, and they were absolutely Twitter-pated. I mean, they just were like out of it. And they'd come and they'd snuggle on the couch and they would just Google at one another and, you know, drool would run down their side of their mouth. So one day in the session, I said, hey, Mike, you know, I know that you love Lisa. I know that. But, you know, what's really important is I'd be interested to know, what do you like about her? That's an important question, by the way. And Mike didn't miss a beat. He looked at me, and then he looked straight in her eyes. He goes, I love how she organizes me. Do you hear any warning signs there? I said, so you love how she organizes you. Does it ever get to be any kind of do you ever feel cramped by that or squeezed by that? Oh, no, I just love how she organizes me. It was about 6 months later, I get a call. Can we come see you? Yeah. She's driving me nuts. What's she doing? She's organizing everything. She organizes my sock drawer. I can't find any underwear. I don't know where stuff is in the house. She's always organized. But Mike, you said you liked. So they have to figure out how. How do you work together? You know, opposition is the Lord's plan. When you look at the verse at the beginning of the book, this is what it says in Genesis 2:18. It's not good for man to be alone. I'll make a helpmate suitable. And the word suitable comes from the Hebrew word meaning opposite. You don't need two of the same halves. You need two different halves. Opposition is how your body works. Stand up for a moment. When you did that, your quadriceps worked. Your hamstrings relaxed. They stretched. Now sit down. Now stand up one more time. You feel like you're at Mass now, don't you? And sit down and notice how your body works in opposition. Sit down slowly. You see, work gets done when the body cooperates with the opposition. When I want to pull something, my bicep contracts. My tricep relaxes. When I want to push something, my tricep contracts. My bicep relaxes. When we get stuck in opposition, it's when both are really working. We're going to talk. What do you do about that, Mark? How do you work better? Are there secrets to this? Yes, there are. I want to do something with you now. Would you stand up? I know. You guys are like, where'd you find this guy? I feel like I'm in an 80s jazzercise class or something. Okay, now, when you got the email, you got an email, I think it was from John, and he had two links to take the Myers-Briggs, and the How We Love. Now, do you happen to have the Myers-Briggs results with you? If you do, get those. If you don't, we're going to wing it. Hopefully you can remember a little bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to call, this is a great room to do this. This midline right here is like 50%. So on this side, for example, if this side was introverts, you'd be going all the way over here, and then to the end of these chairs would be 100% introvert. And then over on that side, all the way to those chairs, 100% would be extrovert. So what I want you to do is I'm going to call out each of the Myers-Briggs initials and ask you to move to a side of the room. So do your best to remember the percent. If you can't quite remember, just do your best guess and find your place in the room. All right, so introverts. If you're an introvert, and this is 50%, so like 60% would be there, or 70% would be there. Introverts on this side, extroverts on that side. Introverts, extroverts, kind of find your place on a line. Check with your people as you're going there. Introvert, extrovert. Now, how this works, as you're finding your place, now notice, is your partner on the other side of the room? Yeah, notice that. Now, here's the thing. Introverts over here, I love you guys because I'm an introvert. I'm an 86% introvert. Introverts, when they're processing their world, they want to do it internally, inside them. They go downstairs into this deep basement lab to think about it before they say anything. Extroverts over here you're on my wife's side of things. When they want to process their world, they want to talk about it. So if you are married as an introvert who wants to think about it, and they want to talk about it, do you think there's going to be any problems anytime? Yes. And it gets even more complicated if the extrovert is a woman and the introvert is a guy, because women have 2 verbal processors in their brain. And us guys just have 1. Don't you ladies say, yeah, see, I knew you guys were slow. But the reality is that you gals do use twice as many words. You can actually understand the flow of conversation much quicker than guys can. And you can also talk much faster because you've got twin turbos. So I'm over here as an introvert, and my wife is talking at the speed of an extrovert. At a certain point in time, I go, oh, I can't do this anymore. And we would have collisions. Why? What, are you mad? No, I just have to go into my internal lab and think and process. But I'm not done talking yet. I said, I'm done listening. I can't do it. So we'll talk more about this, but I want you to notice. Now, the second initial in the Myers-Briggs is intuition or sensing. Intuitives read between the lines, and sensors read the lines. They're very detail-oriented. If you're a sensor, go on this side, and if you're an intuitive, go on this side. I think in the test that you took, they call sensors observant. Is that what it says? Yeah, it's an O, yeah. Yeah. Intuition, and it's, did I say it? Intuition here and sensors over here? Yeah, observant. Yeah, so the intuitives are over here, and then observants are the same as a sensor. Yeah, so find your place. Now, let me ask you now. Is your partner on the other side? Now, here's where that could become a problem, because a sensor wants to know the details in the line. So when you're trying to make a decision, like buy a new car, and you're intuitive, you're like, I don't know, I just don't feel good about the car. Well, why? What don't you like about it? The color? I don't know, I just don't feel good about it. But the sensor wants to know, like, don't you like the seats? Don't you like how it looks? Don't you like how it drives? I don't know, I just don't feel good. And those opposition things can collide. Make sense? Okay, now, thinker and feel. So thinker's over here. Find your place. If you're a thinker, over here. And if you're a feeler, you're over here. Thinker, feeler. This one is the one that really brings a lot of fun. Thinker, feeler. Think, feel. How about now? Is your spouse on the opposite side? Just barely. That's good. That's good. Now, what happens is, when you're processing the world, this is the doorway that information comes in. And if you're a feeler, you feel it first. Feelers think, but they feel first. Thinkers feel, but they think first. Can you see where that would be a problem in a conversation as a couple? And sometimes you can feel like, I wish you would just tell me how you feel. I'm a really strong feeler. I'm like over 90% feeler, and my wife is high 80% thinker. And there's some times where we just go like this. I actually sometimes think she's staying up late at night coming up with evil plans to drive me crazy. Because it's like, why can't we connect? But it's just a feature of personality, and you need to know. Now, this last one is a big deal. J and P. So if you're a J, you're on this side. And if you're a P, you're on this side. Find your place. J, P. Yep, kind of in the mid-ground. All right, so what this means is that once information has hit you and you process it as an introvert or an extrovert, it's come in through the doorways of intuition or sense or observation is the word that they use. You've either thought it through or felt it through. This is what you want to do with the information. If you're a J, you feel more comfortable after a decision's made. Let's do something. We got to make a decision. Let's get it done. If you're a P, you're uncomfortable making a decision. You would like to explore more options. Well, wait, we haven't thought about it. Could we talk more about it? Well, wait, we should look at a few more catalogs. We should talk to a few more people. Can you see where that would start to collide? Are you on opposite sides as a couple? This is a big one. All right, so go back to your chairs. And as you sit down, say to your spouse, turn to them and say, I love you so much, I'm going to work at understanding you better. But the challenge that we have when we collide, especially like with something like a Myers-Briggs, is different feels dangerous to us. It feels dangerous and it drains our tank. Because when danger hits, we automatically respond to it with an instinct of fight or flight. When all of a sudden you're trying to make an important decision and you realize, oh, you're just not getting me. You're not understanding my intuition, for example. You want to have all the facts, and all I can tell you is my gut just doesn't feel right about this. And the other person, that feels odd to them. And then the danger goes in. What happens when we have a perception difference, because we see the world as we are, not as the whole world is. And if you married someone who is opposite from you, you're going to have some paradigm shifts that hit. But when they hit, it strikes first as a danger place, which is in the back of your brain, the amygdala. This is different. And different makes us step back and go, this feels dangerous. And I don't know. And trust drops. And your nerves get stirred up. And you feel yourself just getting more and more tense, and that takes energy. And remember, energy is limited. And we feel like, oh, how can I stay in this conversation? Which is why sometimes you'll have these conversations and your differences are so pronounced, you just go, let's stop talking about it. We can't get to where we need to get. And in those moments, what we need is a source of strength and love that's available 24/7, that never runs out, that never changes, and completely understands you. Do you know anybody like that? I can't tell you how many marriage books I've read in 40 years of doing this, but there are very few that really talk about how does our faith help us in a moment like that. You see, what you feel, and you guys let me know if you can't see this over there, okay? Can you see the board now when you're looking? So if Mark is here and Betsy is here and we are having a disagreement, you can go back and forth. Betsy will want to talk about what she thinks. I want to talk about how I feel. Betsy wants to lay out all the facts. Mark wants to talk about what his gut's saying and his intuition is. And then the conversation goes so long that Mark stops talking. I don't want to talk anymore. And what I need is someone who understands both of us. And in this moment of conflict, when I don't understand, and I may not even understand me, I need a moment where I can do 1 Peter 5:7, where I can cast my cares on him. And then the second part of that verse is so critical, because a lot of us will cast their cares. We'll tell Jesus about our cares. We'll have long prayer lists. We'll tell him, I'm concerned about this kid, or I'm concerned about my job, or I'm concerned about my spouse, or I'm concerned about my neighbor. But 1 Peter 5:7 expounds on this. It says it's not enough just to cast it. You need to receive his care for you. And you see, at that moment, it's his care because we love because he first loves us. When Jesus is getting ready to leave the planet, he takes the students and he sits them down and he says, listen, a new command I give you, love one another, even as I have loved you. It's instructive. You won't be able to do this without this, because we are limited. I need a source that's always reliable. And what's foundational for you to get in your head, and what we'll talk about for the remainder of the weekend, is what does this process look like so that out of this care I received, now I can go to Betsy. But until that moment, Mark is all prickly and all grumpy. I don't want to talk. We're not getting anywhere. Rawr, rawr, rawr. And this is why the apostle writes in Galatians 5, the only thing that counts. That's exactly what it says in the Greek. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. And it takes great faith to love for 56 years. Because we'll run out. Faith required. And it's especially important because of this thing that we encounter where we feel risk. Boy, I was tempted. I just couldn't do it. I was tempted to put our wedding picture on there. I was 25. I was running marathons, so I was in pretty good shape. I had hair, and I had this big old mustache. And I knew you guys would tease the daylights out of me. We were just kids. And now, 40 years later, you look at us, and we've changed a lot. And remember, when there's change feels different. And when different hits, it feels risky. There's a guy that wrote a book, How to Avoid Marrying a Jerk. And he said in the foreword, it's not gender exclusive, there's jerkettes as well. And here's the idea, and think with me on this, okay? That, I don't know what I did. Let's get here. I think there's the laser. This is like a light board. It's like Jono up there in his crow's nest up there. In fact, give Jono a hand, would you? He did a great job running sound and everything. And he has a light board and a sound board, and this is off, and this is all the way on. And each of these little sliders represent a category. What you know, how much you trust, how reliable the person is, how committed to both of your goodness they are, in your whole heart. Now, this is how this works. Let me ask you this. If that red dot was actually down here, so we're at the first level. If you know them that much, how much would you trust them? How many would go the same? How many would trust them even more? Do we have anyone that would really crank it up? How about trusting a little bit less? And the idea behind it is that, yes, your trust depends on what you know of the person. And in particular, you want to know, are they who they say they are? Is it reliable, what they're saying? And are they committed to my goodness as much as their own? Now my heart can go. All these things go up. And when he would talk to these young couples that were thinking about getting married or just married, they would say, well, it felt so awkward to hold back our trust. But here's the complicated thing. You might be married 2 years. In fact, most of the studies show that marital distress begins in years 2 and 3. Because what happens is year 1, you get married and you're still a little Twitter-pated. And then you notice some differences and you go, that'll probably change. They'll come around to see it my way. Right? And it doesn't. And then so you try to talk about whatever that difference is and how'd that go. All of a sudden, your introvert meets extrovert, or your thinker meets feeler, or whatever it is, and you just can't land on some kind of a compromise, and so you feel distressed, and you decide, ooh, not going to talk about that, but it's still there. It's still there. And so in that moment, all of a sudden, what happens is you need to be able to issue some kind of trust, but what you know is, ooh, we're not in agreement. How do I do that? We'll actually do an exercise tomorrow that will help you to understand how. And all of this just stirs up a boatload of emotions, which, Lord knows, those can be fun, right? And we get so much training and equipping about emotions, don't we? People are always telling us, no. Why are you so emotional? Why don't you keep those to yourself? And we're going to talk about emotions, not so that we can be touchy-feely, but so that we can be not so touchy. What do we do when we feel overwhelmed by any kind of emotion or a feeling? And so the temptation tonight is to think, wow, I hope my spouse is listening to this. And I actually hope you both are, because we're all learning love. I'm 65, married 40 years, and I'm in some of the most intensive learning right now. It's a different season. My ministry focus is changing. We're aging. And so what we knew has changed, and so it stirred up all kinds of emotions. We said goodbye to our moms this last year, went through all these different things. All of us in this room are learning love. And we will learn it best when we support each other's learning and we learn to trust Jesus together, orchestrating helping us to harmonize. Because the reality is that a good marriage is two good people, each working on getting gooder. And that's what this weekend's going to be about. And we're going to really start with first looking at you as an individual. I am the most unlikely person that I've met to teach on love. I grew up in an alcoholic home. I didn't realize this until I was writing my thesis. And as I was writing it, all of a sudden the awareness of this hit me. I had like this remembrance of me as a 5-year-old walking out the back door of my house in Illinois, heading to the creek I loved because it was my place of peace. Because last night, when my dad came home from the bar, he and my mom got into it and someone drove away and I didn't know who was home. And I would sit by the creek and I'd wonder about it. And thank God for my friend John Gallo. I don't know if you guys have had a childhood friend. I've been looking for John Gallo, Googling like mad. I can't find him. I hope I can find him. Because John Gallo was this great friend, and he would come and he would meet me down by the creek. And at some point in time, his mom would call him for dinner. John, time for dinner. And John would take off. And then John would go, and I would count 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. And I would run to John Gallo's house, and I would slide under the porch where his family would gather above me for dinner. And I would hear the sounds of love that rocked my world. John's dad had this deep baritone voice. He sounded like God. How are you, kids? And I'd be like, oh. And before they would eat, he would go around and he would ask each kid, what's a highlight of today? And they had I think there were 7 kids. And then they would pray and then they would eat. And they were an Italian family, so they would eat. Mangia. Eat, eat, eat. It would go on for hours. But you guys, if I'd have been caught and they would have invited me up to sit at the table, I don't know if I could have gone. I didn't feel like I could belong. And then, at the age of 23, Jesus came under the porch and said, come on. Come sit at the table. There is a place at the table for every one of you. Don't stay under the porch. Get up to the table. So I want to ask you to close your eyes, if you would. And think with me. First, we talked about challenges of love. What's your biggest challenge? Yours. Not you as a couple. What is your biggest challenge? Is it the differences? Is it energy? Is it emotion? Is it risk? What are 2 areas that you feel like, really, Mark, if 1 or 2 of these could change this weekend, that would be awesome. And as you think about it, let's funnel it down to the next question I want to ask you. What do you hope is different when you leave this weekend? How will you know? How will you say to yourself, wow, that was worth going to? What needs to be different? Now let's pause for a moment and pray. And as I pray, I want to encourage you to pray and tell the Lord, you know what, this is what stood out to me. My challenge. Is it differences, energy, emotion, risk? There might be another one that you have. I want you to hand the challenge over to Jesus in a fresh way. Let's pray. Lord, you know. Your word says that you're light. So, not much hides there. So we want to be honest and courageous and open our heart. And in the privacy of each of our hearts, Lord, what is it that you're saying to each person here about the challenges? And help them to hand it over. And secondly, Lord, we want to pray for our hopes for this weekend. What we hope would be different. What we hope would be new or renewed or transformed this weekend. We want to put it in your hands, the living hope, and ask you to breathe on that. And we're just going to pray one more thing. Do your best listening now. What is one thing, Lord, that I could do that would bless my partner this weekend? In fact, let me ask it this way. Jesus, what is one thing you and I can do this weekend that will really bless my spouse? Open your eyes. I want to encourage you to keep listening. I mean, in a moment like this, sometimes for some of us, it doesn't come right away. But I believe the Lord wants to illumine, even as you're resting tonight, what is it that you're hoping changes? And what is one thing you and Jesus together can do for your spouse? Would you stand with me? And I'm going to pray for you. Thanks for being attentive. I know it's a little bit late, certainly late for an old guy like me. And you traveled. Glad you're listening. I'm looking forward to journeying with you. And I just want to say to you that, listen, man, if Spencer can learn it, you can too. Lord, we thank you for tonight. We thank you that we can go from here with a confidence and an assurance that all of heaven is working for us to get love. It's such a big deal to you. You say it over and over again. And Lord, you know where we are in that journey. You know what it is that we need to learn. And so we pray. We invite you in your power and your strength and in your love to come and to help us learn what we need to learn in this season of life. In Jesus' name, amen.